Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala, of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, is with us every Thursday to offer her legal expertise by providing general advice on the latest hot topics. And do we have a hot topic or two for you this morning? She has experience spanning more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law, and she joins us now. Morning to you, Despina.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning.
Good morning. So today is Q&A day. Very exciting. Our special edition of Talking Law. So listeners have sent in questions, and in the next half an hour, basically, we will shed some light on the law and provide the answers that you're wanting. So our very first question comes from Whistler from Yamba. Thank you for sending this in. She wrote, "What do you do if you enter a shop that wants you to wear a mask, but you have a medical condition that disallows you from wearing one?
Ooh.
Can you get arrested, or will the shopkeeper get arrested or fined? What law are we breaking, or is there a law or act that protects the shopkeeper?"
Great question.
Such a good question, isn't it? And it's so topical at the moment because everyone's talking about this, aren't they? Do I have to sign in using the QR code? Do I have to wear a face mask? So really great question, and thank you for sending that in. So I think we're going to spend a bit of time answering this as well because there is so much information, and I have read obviously parts of the legislation and information on various government websites already, but I delved into it a bit more detail recently by chance, and being able to answer this question too, it's going to be proved very useful. But there is so much information, so where do we start? I think that we can talk first about wearing masks. Okay, so as I said last week, if we go back to the beginning, where it all began. So we had COVID that came in last year. Now, there were abundance of laws that were passed, okay, to deal with all sorts of things, where closure of shops, shutdowns, and then dealing with the fallout of that for businesses. So as part of that, we do have state by state the Public Health Act, okay, and under that Public Health Act, the Chief Medical Officer or Chief Health Officer can provide or make certain orders and directions for the public health and well-being and safety of Australians, and it's state by state. So each state has its own Public Health Act, and they're very similar. So when COVID, commenced, if I could call it that, then we had certain orders and directions that were already put in place under the Public Health Act. For example, the shutdown of businesses. Now, most recently, we've had directions issued, mandatory directions and orders, again under the same act, about mandatory wearing of face masks, okay, in public, in various places. So that's been out, I think, for a few weeks now. For in different states have different periods of time. I know Queensland is actually coming out of it. We're supposed to be finishing this Friday, tomorrow, and I think New South Wales is continuing. So that information about the mandatory directions, it's all available for people to read. But let's get into the nitty gritty, shall we, about, well, what happens if you don't wear a face mask and you go into a shopping centre, and how does that all work?
That's right, because there are, as you've found, as you delved deeper and deeper into this for us, there are numerous exemptions.
There are. So,
ooh, exemptions, guys.
Well, I'd like to call them exceptions.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, there are multiple exceptions. So, and there's probably at least 10 or 15 or even more. So we won't probably go through all of them, but we'll go through some of the main ones. And some people are aware of them, some of them are not. But for example, all right, we'll start with the basic. If you're alone in a car or with family members in the same household, right, you don't have to wear a face mask. And I see people in cars sometimes, and I don't know if they're part of the same family household, but you don't have to wear a face mask in that particular case. If you're eating or drinking or taking medicine, so if you were going to a restaurant or a cafe, you are supposed to be wearing your face mask as you enter, right, and checking with the QR code app, and we can talk about that in a minute as well. But when you sit down, you are about to eat and drink, aren't you? So that's why when you go into restaurants and cafes, most of the people that are sitting down don't wear a face mask because you don't have to in those instances, or you're taking medicine. Usual workplace, some places you can keep that distance of 1.5 metres, so you don't have to wear the face masks. Alone outdoors or with members of the same household. But let's get into some more interesting ones. So other exceptions. So if you have a medical condition or disability where wearing the masks will create medical problems for you, all right? So such as breathing problems, such as skin conditions, such as traumatic psychological disorders. So some people do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and if it's the case that you will put on a mask, and by just wearing that mask, the whole traumatic experience comes back to you and flashes before you, which is post-traumatic stress disorder syndrome, then you can say, okay, well, I can't wear a mask, I have a medical exception or exemption because of that particular instance. So there are some very real exceptions to wearing face masks, centering around your medical condition. Okay, so it's really, really important. If you are suffering from asthma, okay, so that's another one.
Yeah.
Okay, and some people suffer from this COPD, so it's this disorder where you have a reduced lung capacity. Okay, so, and a lot of the elderly people have it that I'm aware of. So that might be something where you go, oh, I really, really can't breathe wearing this mask. So therefore, you've got a medical condition that would allow you to say, okay, I don't have to wear a mask. All right. So if you fall within these categories, what happens when you are out? Okay, and how do you prove this? And do you have to prove this?
Well, that's a good question. That's right. In fact, I was going to ask you that. Do you need it in writing? Do you need to go to your doctor and say, look, I have this medical condition. I need to carry this piece of paper with me. Is that necessary?
Well, the information, and like you said before, I did have to, once I delved into this, I had to jump through quite a few different pages to find the answers to the questions, whether or not it was set up in that particular way for a particular reason. I don't know. But it took me quite a while to jump through the various pages and hoops and clicking on hyperlinks to other hyperlinks to then take me to other pages to find the answers to the questions. So I dare say that just the majority of people out there would find it difficult to find the answers to their questions. So hopefully this will help. But yes, so when you are out, there is nothing in there that tells me that you have to actually have anything on you from a doctor, right? So if you feel that you fall within that category, I have a medical exemption or I fall within an exception because I have a medical condition that will exacerbate it by wearing a mask, because I have a breathing problem, because I have asthma, because I have a skin allergy condition, because I feel traumatized or another psychological disorder or condition, when you are out, if you say that you have one of these conditions and you fall within the exception, you don't have to prove that. That is the critical point, and that's what this information is telling people like myself when I was reading it, to say, well, you don't have to have a medical certificate. If someone asks you for that, you do not have to have one on you or to prove that you have that condition.
And I know that Whistler mentioned going into a shop, but what about police? If they say, hey, do you have so-and-so, is this actually true? You have no piece of paper, nothing on you. Is that fine?
Well, the Queensland Police and Queensland Health are there to carry out the orders that are issued under the Public Health Act, okay? And that's quite clear, and that's one of their many roles. But they have to abide by the laws, and the laws say that we have to wear masks, right, out in public, common places, but there are exceptions. And there are multiple exceptions, including, for example, children under the age of 12. Not sure if people are aware of that, of course. So that's one of the exceptions. That if you fall within that, you simply say, I have a reasonable, lawful excuse for not wearing a mask. And what is that? Well, because of this reason. Now, they don't have to delve any more further than that. Wow. And if they do, it could almost be seen as discriminatory, almost, depending on the circumstances, because the information is clear that there is a rule about wearing masks. There are exceptions. If you fall within those exceptions, you say, I have a reasonable, lawful excuse. This is what it is. Now, the shopkeeper, the police, whoever it is that you're speaking with about this or engaging, do not have to inquire any more beyond that.
So that's the end of the story.
They can't send you away. They can't go, no, get out. They have to serve you.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Well, there's your answer, Whistler. How good.
Yes.
And I know we mentioned QR codes. So this is another one, very topical. They've just become mandatory pretty much everywhere for businesses. do we have to sign in all the time?
Every shop,
Every
everywhere,
shop.
yeah.
What? And to me, I said this to Wayne yesterday because I fuel up all the time. I have a little fuel tank, and I could not imagine. And obviously now I have to, but signing in every single time.
Well, I hope
it's
that
crazy.
the sign in isn't next to the petrol pump. So
Exactly. No, I hope not. But yeah, what if you don't have a phone? What do you do?
So looking into the information again and again, jumping through various hoops and pages, etc., and various links. So this is what I have found. So yes, there is the law about, okay, you've got to check in. All right, so what does that mean? It means you've got to have a phone, doesn't it? And you've got to have a compatible phone. So I understand it has to be an iPhone or an Android phone for it to be compatible. Not everybody has a phone. And as you say, what do I do if I don't have a phone? And a lot of the elderly people in the community don't have phones, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they weren't brought up in that era of mobile phones, and it's all too hard to work it out now. I completely understand. Sometimes I'd like to throw my phone out the window. 100%. You know, I get annoyed with technology too. So if you are in that category, I don't have a phone or it's not compatible, what happens? So if that occurs and you have to check in, as we say, there is always the manual system, number one. So you can say to the people that greet you at the store, look, I don't have a phone, or my phone's not compatible, or I don't know how to use it, or I don't have the app. So give me, I'll sign in on manual register if you have one, right? So you can sign in manually like we used to before the QR code was out, where you just put in your name and phone number and address. Okay, so that's one way to deal with that. Another way is the businesses themselves can have something called a business profile mode of app that they can have for their own business. So you can ask the business owners or the staff, look, where is your business profile mode app? I will use that and you can put my information in, all right? So that's an alternative, isn't it? Or you can simply say to the staff, look, as I said, I don't have a phone, right? It's not compatible. So why don't you just take a copy of my ID, driver's license or Medicare card, whatever it is on you, and that will be sufficient. Okay? Because it's all about contact tracing, isn't it? It's all about if there's an outbreak, right? We need to be able to trace the people that were in the store at a particular time for a particular period. And interestingly enough, the information in Queensland anyway, is that information, if you're ever wondering what happens to it, is supposed to be stored only for 56 days.
Now I noticed you said supposed to be.
Well, it says that, doesn't it? So, but what my curiosity got the better of me, of course, and I want to know what happens after the 56 days.
Deleted,
And then I'm sent to another hyperlink, which sent me to another page, which talked about the Privacy Act. And of course, under the Privacy Act, and lay people, of course, probably won't read the ins and outs of the Privacy Act, but under that act, there are laws about what happens to retaining people's private information. You can read that at your leisure. But yes, that was the answer to the question of what happens after the 56 days. Go to the Privacy Act.
So the government, the state government, supposedly will, if they're doing the right thing, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, after 56 days, they will just simply delete all of that information about where you were at what time and with whom.
Well, that is the, I suppose, the message behind it, isn't it? So that's just some information about wearing face masks and QR codes. But we haven't really touched upon, I suppose, the other issue that people may feel very strongly about out there, and that is my human rights. Okay, so at the core of all of this, and there are many pieces of legislation that deal with these issues, Public Health Act and Privacy Act, we've also got the Human Rights Act. So we may touch upon that as well.
We'll see how we go. That is Despina Priala from Priala Legal. And don't go anywhere. We will be answering more of your questions.